bloodline, this ain't no religion, no religion. Religion is Catholics, Muslims, Christians. Don't be deceived, you won't find that in the Bible. When did Yah'S say, go get my ways a title? Pagans on the rise in reality. Hebrew is my language and Israelite my nationality. I'm standing on that ark like Noah did. Israel overcoming floods like Noah's kids. I'm a son of Shem, not a son of Ham. Gotta get that wisdom if you really want to see the land. We the salt of the earth, even though we curse. But if that salt ain't got no flavor, then what it's worth? You can go and run the streets, but not me. I'ma serve the only one who made me. You can go and love the world, but not me. I'ma make sure my garments stay clean. You can move how you want, but not me. That Bible real, and one day you'll see.
Shalom, my Israelite brothers and sisters. So today, I want to do a lesson entitled The Prophecies / Curses of Yah's Chosen People. I'm conducting this lesson because of some false doctrines that are being pushed by some very wicked camp leaders. What camps am I talking about? The camps you see right before you. Take a very close look, Israel, because these are the same leaders who are deceptively misleading Yah's chosen people. One of these false doctrines is the false 12 chart. And a lot of y'all know about that chart that's been going around. It was created by man based on lust and deception. Well, in this false chart, camp leaders are teaching their followers that these white, pale-skinned Native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Hispanics, and Native Americans are Israelites, and they are causing a great sin in Israel. This lie is based on 2nd Ezra 13, chapter 13, 40, and through 45, that the northern tribes came to America on ships based on a definition lie that Azareth was America. Now, I did a video on this earlier, one of my first videos, so check out, it's titled The Northern Tribe Deception. I did a 3-part series on this, and this breaks down on how the 10 northern tribes did not come over here to America like people are teaching, but instead they crossed over the Euphrates into Africa. But I'm going to show you that towards the end of the video. But just moving on, we have a lot of sincere brothers and sisters in these camps who are being misled by wicked leaders. And it is our job to expose the lies that are being dealt to Yah's chosen people. It is our responsibility, y'all, you know. And as leaders and people that are awakened who know the lies of these camps, you know, we got to keep pushing this out. We got to keep dealing with the lies that are being dealt with. We know that the Most High is going to be the main one who's going to deal with them. But that doesn't mean that we should not be combating these lies that's going on. But what I really want to deal with in this lesson is strictly the curses on how only the Negroes, or the so-called blacks scattered to the 4 corners, fit the curses of Deuteronomy 28. And I'm also going to show you that these white, pale-skinned Native Americans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Hispanics, and Native Americans do not, I'm going to repeat that again, do not, all caps, do not fit the prophecies or curses of Deuteronomy 28. So, brothers and sisters, with that being said, let's move on.
And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathens, whither the Lord shall lead you.
So let's take a look at this one. So Deuteronomy 4:27 makes it very clear that this was foretold that our people will be scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. And it is true. We are the only race of people in the world that are scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. No matter where you go in this world, you're going to see black people. Now, I know that for a fact because I've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, I've been all through Europe. I've pretty much been around the world. And everywhere I've been, I've seen so-called black people, so-called Negroes. You know, so who are the only race of people that fit this prophecy? We are. See, the Most High knew what he was talking about. The Most High knew what he was doing when he said that, and he made it come to be so that in these days we would know and we would be able to easily identify the chosen people of Yah. Now, y'all tell me if these pale-skinned, these white pale-skinned Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Native Americans, Hispanics are scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. Of course not. They got their own countries. How can they be scattered to the 4 corners of the earth when they got their own place to live? Doesn't make sense. So this one right here alone should just rule out that this 12 tribe chart is fake. Hands down. You can't deny it. All right, let's go to the next one.
The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
All right, let's talk about the stranger rising above us. Now, this curse is super clear. That's what I love about the Most High's word. It needs no interpretation. It interprets itself. So let's talk about this a little bit. So the stranger that is with thee shall rise above thee. Now, no matter where we are, people are above us. We know we're in the land of our enemies. And no matter how hard we try to get ahead, it seems like we can never get ahead. There's a reason for that, because it's a curse. The Most High foretold that it would happen. So no matter what we try to do, we would never succeed at it. Take Black Wall Street, for instance. Y'all remember that story? I'm gonna leave a link. I want to try to leave a link in the description if I remember. But anyway, go check it out. Black Wall Street, black community, they had everything. But you know, the end, it got bombshelled by a bunch of Ku Klux Klansmen. So no matter where we are, it's like the stranger or the other nations are always above us. And this was foretold. So this is a perfect prophecy and a curse to identify who the chosen people of Yah are. So we can't refute it. Blacks, the so-called African Americans, and the blacks scattered to the four corners of the earth are the only race of people that are so behind or below, it seems like they can't get above anybody. But we're going to talk more about that because it's going to get interesting. I made it very clear in the beginning that I'm going to give you distinctive clarification on the prophecies of Yah's chosen people and how we fit them. And I'm going to also show you how these other folks do not fit the prophecies. These pale-skinned Mexicans, Native Americans, Hispanics that these camps are pushing to get foreign women, that's right. I'm going to show you distinctly how they don't fit. So after this lesson, we should all be 100% clear that these other nations do not fit Yah's chosen people. They do not fit the prophecies of Yah's chosen people. So let's continue.
He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him.
So we would not lend to our enemies. This is another big one, y'all. So let me ask y'all this. How many black-owned banks do you think that we have in the U.S.? We got a few of them. But here's the catch. These banks are run by white organizations that strictly monitor where the money goes in these black banks. Let me give you an example. So these black banks, they call themselves black-owned banks. All the money they're receiving with the interest still goes to the privileged whites, for the loans that they get and everything. So we would not lend to our enemies. You look everywhere you go. How many black businesses or organizations you see lending to other nations? Zero. We don't see it. This is another curse and a prophecy that the Most High foretold would happen to his people. This is how we distinctly know that we are the chosen people of the Most High, through these curses. This is just number 3, and we haven't even covered all of them yet. We still got a while to go. Let me give you another example. Are y'all familiar with the term gentrification? Well, gentrification is when you have contractors that come through an inner city, and what they do is they buy up all the property, remodel, whatever, and build. And then they raise the prices sky high to force the so-called black people out of those communities. Now, they can't just go and say, well, hey, you got to move out. Then that would seem racist. But what they do is that they do it in a slick way. They buy the property, raise the prices, fix it up really nice, and then they go tell the people that are written out from them, hey, we're going to raise the rent by $500, and but if you still want to live here, that's fine, but we got to raise the rent, knowing good and well that these so-called black folks are not going to be able to afford that. So where do these black folks go? Well, they're forced to move in with their parents or whatever, relatives, friends, and will have to relocate somewhere else. So that's what gentrification is. And this has been going on since the 70s, and it increased. And, if you've been anywhere in a major city, downtown anywhere, you'll see how they built buildings and things like that and how they beautify it. And now all you see is like pathways, running white women and all kind of stuff. People walking their dogs. You just see mostly white people out there in these inner cities that have taken over that. So you got to ask yourself, the question: where did all the black folks go? Well, they were forced out. So this is what it means that when it says that we should not lend to our enemies. Now, I've known some black contractors who went into banks to try to get loans for their contracts, and they couldn't hardly get anything. But these white folks, these white contractors will go into a bank, no kind of degree, education, and would get millions of dollars, certified loans, to go into the downtown areas to build up and to remodel, just so they can push our people out, so they can push the Most High's people out of those communities. That's what they do. And look it up for yourself. Research it for yourself. Go and look up gentrification, and you'll see how the process is. It's crazy, y'all. And this is what's happening. Another example, if you go anywhere in the United States, you see these quick loan or these quick money get programs where you go in and you trade something, you get a quick loan or whatever. It seems like we're always going to the other nations, to the heathen nations, to borrow money. But that was foretold. And that's what you see right now. You see a lot of that going on. Anywhere you go in the United States, you're going to see that. Even around the world, you're going to see that. You see so-called blacks scattered to the four corners of the earth that are constantly begging or either trying to get money, because we don't have the ability to lend to other nations. We don't have that. Look at us. We're totally at the bottom. All right, let's keep on. We got some more.
He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail.
All right, Israel, y'all already know where I'm about to go with this one. No matter where we are in this world, we are the tail, the bottom. I don't care where you go in the U.S., in the world, whether you've been, whether you traveled across the country, everywhere where you see so-called Negroes scattered, we are the tail, complete bottom. Now let's talk about this a little bit. So how are we the tail and not the head? Well, we know why, because of the curse. This is foretold. Now, we don't own our people, so-called blacks, Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth. We don't own the banks. We don't own the movies. We don't own the movie industries. We don't own the constructions. We don't own the companies. We don't own the airlines. We don't own the news medias. We don't own none of it. So what do we own? What do we have? We don't have anything. Now, you have a few so-called blacks who have businesses. Now, I could think of particularly one where I live at, but it's a restaurant, but it's a low-end restaurant. And anytime you hear about a black-owned business, something really small or what, because again, the Most High made it that way so that we, as so-called Negroes, can be easily identified as the chosen people. Now, this is not going to be forever, because a lot of our people are waking up, and we're waking up to Torah, keeping these laws and commandments and statutes the best way we can. So it's evident, I don't have to go in great detail. You all know it. You look around us, look around everywhere. Wherever so-called Negroes are, we're just at the bottom. It's common sense. We see it. We can't get away from it. And we tried to get ahead back during the 60s. I've already told you about Black Wall Street. No matter what our people tried to do to get ahead, it seems like our enemies were right there to knock us back down, because this was foretold. This would happen. Now let's talk about these so-called white, pale-skinned, Native Mexicans, Hispanics, Native Americans, and Cubans, and these people that these camps are saying are Israelites. Let's see if they are the tail. Now, take the Mexicans, for example. Now, first of all, they got their own country. But in the United States, you can't go 5 blocks without hitting or without passing some kind of Mexican restaurant. Now, y'all tell me if it really looks like these people are the tail. I don't think so. You go to Mexico, I've been to Mexico before. Yeah, you got some poor areas in Mexico, and you got some very rich areas in Mexico. But guess what? It's all owned by Mexico. They have their own government. They're not run by any other race of group of people, a race of people. They're run by Mexicans. You got these Mexicans that are running multi-billion-dollar drug cartels, push them into black communities. You mean to tell me that these people are Israelites? You mean to tell me that these people fit the prophecies of the Most High? You mean to tell me that these people are the tail? Oh no. These people are some of the richest people. You know, and people who haven't been to Mexico, if you haven't been to certain parts of Mexico, you would not understand. Puerto Ricans, for example. You know, same thing. Same thing with the Cubans, and so forth with these other pale-skinned heathens that these camps are teaching that are Israelites. Now, let me tell you this. Now, go to those countries, and you'll see that the Negroes in those regions, the Negroes that are in Mexico, the Negroes that are in Cuba, the Negroes that are in South America, the Negroes that are all over. Now, those are the minorities, and I guarantee you, you would not see any kind of success with them. Those people are at the very bottom, and guess what? They're being constantly discriminated against in the countries that they're dwelling in. That's right. So this is another example how these pale-skinned heathens do not fit the curses and the prophecies of Yah's chosen people. They just don't. And I'm going to prove that they don't fit one iota of the curses or prophecies. So this is it. You know, this is how you know. And when you look around and do your research, and I'm going to have some links that's going to describe where these heathens came from as well too. So we're going to talk about that a little later. But I just wanted to give you an example, a visual of how we as a people, the chosen people of Yah, the Negroes, are the only ones who fit these curses and prophecies of Deuteronomy 28 and throughout the whole Bible. Let's continue.
The Lord shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, and rebuke in all that thou settest thine hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly, because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me.
Remember when our holy Hamashiach was standing before Pilate, being judged, what was the first thing the Pharisees said, our stupid forefathers? They said, let his blood be on us and our children. Now, they made a big mistake when they did that because they had no idea that the next 2,000 years was going to play out like it had. And during those next 2,000 years to this present day, that everything that we set aside to do with our hands would be demolished. It would not go forward. We would be destroyed, cursed with vexation. We constantly caught hell. Our forefathers constantly caught hell during slavery. They could seem like they could never escape. They had to constantly watch their children being taken away. They had to constantly watch their wives being raped and the kids being raped. That was a terrible time to live in. You know, going through that stuff, having to watch all that. But as we're starting to come out of our captivity, as Yah's chosen people are starting to wake up, we're starting to come out of that captivity. And we're seeing more and more destructions upon this earth. And, you know, this is some exciting times to be living in because our time of deliverance is that near. All these curses that are being prescribed upon us, these prophecies, they're coming to an end. They are coming to an end. But it had to be so because it was foretold that we would have to suffer from these curses and prophecies. No other race of people fit these curses. Now, when we're talking about these heathens who these camps are claiming the Israelites, they haven't gone what we've gone through. They haven't gone what our forefathers gone through. They've always had their land. They've been able to plant their own vineyards and so forth. And, you know, they've been having to have their own businesses and everything. They've never had to go through what our forefathers and us had to go through. As simple as that. All right, let's keep on.
The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and thou shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth.
So we will be constantly slain by our enemies. This is a twofold prophecy. And we all know about the Atlantic slave trade. We studied in our history books. We've seen all the movies. This began sometime around 1600s, but scholars believe and have proof that it could have started sometime in the early 1500s. But we know for sure from scriptures that the camps of Judah, which consisted of Judah, Levi, and Benjamin, were to be dispersed to the four corners of the earth. And the northern tribes will be gathered from the countries of Africa and the Mediterranean. But let's go there right quick. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 11. And I'm going to read verse 11 and 12. That's Isaiah chapter 11 and 12. And it says, "And it shall come to pass that in that day that the Lord shall set his hand against the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth." So even here in this verse, it describes where the Most High is going to gather his people from. Now, we know that the 10 northern tribes are scattered throughout Africa, Middle East, Mediterranean, for sure. And I'm not saying that we have some northern tribes here in America, but we got to understand when God's word is written, he sends his angels to activate it to make sure it happens. So for the most part, yeah, the northern tribes are going to be coming from the countries of Africa and parts of the Mediterranean and Middle East. And then we also read that Judah is going to be sent to the four corners or dispersed to the four corners of the earth. So we know for sure that this Atlantic slave trade was mostly of the camps of Judah, which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And so there you have that proof right there to show you where the 12 tribes were dispersed to. Let's go back to Deuteronomy 28 and 25. So I want to cover a couple of things here. So in this verse, look at the one where it says, "Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them." Now, you know our forefathers were constantly trying to escape their slave masters. And you always had a remnant of them that really knew that, this whole thing wasn't right and what their slave masters was doing. So they were trying to escape, but it seemed like no matter which way they went, their enemies were there to meet them. Now, we've had several revolts. You've all heard about the Nat Turner Revolt, and we've known about the Harriet Tubman, who helped our slaves escape from the Underground Railroad. But there are a lot more slave revolts than they've actually mentioned. They just don't put it out there. You won't really know about it. You have to research it. But we had a lot of slave revolts who were trying to flee one way and then trying to flee 7 different ways. So that's what it means when it says that. It means that we've had our forefathers just trying to flee every way they can. And a lot of times it was met with disappointment because these slave masters had their guards waiting there for them. So this is what this is talking about. Another big prophecy that only our people fit, the Negroes that are scattered to the four corners of the earth. No other race of people have experienced this, as it says in Deuteronomy 28:25. Now, you have some people who would try to say, especially white people, they love to say that, oh yeah, there were white people in slavery. You had the Irish that came out here and they were slaves. That's a bunch of lies and baloney. Because if you do the research, yeah, there were some Irish that came over here, but they weren't slaves. They came as indentured servants. So what that meant was that they came and they worked until they owned a piece of land. But guess what? Once they got that land, once they paid their dues, they got them some slaves. So they were no different from the slave masters. So anybody who tells you that white people were slaves too, that's a bunch of lies. They need to do their research. But let's talk about these Hispanics. Let's talk about these Native Americans and Puerto Ricans and Cubans that these camps are saying are Israelites. Let's see if they went through something like this. Now, if you do your research and you look up how they came over here, you will see that they clearly didn't go through what our forefathers went through. Now, yeah, you had your Spaniards, your Italians, they came over and raped the Taino Indians, which made up the Mexicans and Puerto Ricans and all them other folks that these camps are pushing. They came and raped them. But let's just say that these folks are Israelites like these camps are saying. So if the Italians and the Spaniards came here and mixed their seed with the women, then guess what? According to scriptures, you are what your father is. So that means that their generation would have been Europeans anyway. So you see how stupid that sounds when they say that they mixed themselves, the northern tribes mixed themselves with the people and all that stuff. You know, this, it doesn't make sense. Doesn't add up, and you cannot. History backs it up. So I would challenge you all to really look that up, and I'm going to leave some links that describe where these folks come from. Because did y'all know that the Mexicans, they make up 3 races of people? They're not even a race. They make up they're a mixture of Europeans, Native Americans, and Asians. That's right. They're a mixture of all those 3, and you can do your research on that. So, you know, this whole 12 tribe chart thing is so false, it's the day is long. And, you know, it's just crazy how people can just think that these people are Israelites and just totally ignore the Most High. And it's the most abominable thing you can do is take your heritage and give it to someone else, and then take in their foreign women. You know, that's a big abomination. You know, and it's going to be some great wailing and gnashing of teeth in the day of judgment. All right, let's look at the first part of this verse, Deuteronomy 28 and 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Let's talk about that one. Now, we all know that one too well. We know that this happened during slavery. This has been happening for the last 2,000 years. Ever since our forefathers put a curse on us by saying, let the Holy Hamashiach, let his blood be on us and our children. We've been suffering ever since. So when it says smitten before the enemies, it literally means that the slaves were killed, constantly killed before the enemies. Their bodies just laid out, no graves, no nothing. Just laid out like wild beasts that you would see when you're driving your car on the side, when you see an animal on the side of the road or something. You know, that's how we were discarded, because we were considered a fifth of a person. We were literally considered a fifth. We were considered less than animals. Now, can you imagine what our forefathers had to go through? What other race of people were counted as a fifth of a human? That's impossible. No other race was counted as that. You know, and that's why it makes me so mad when these wicked camp leaders try to say that these people are Israelites. They have no idea what they're doing. That's like a slap in the face to the Most High. You know, when only our people fit these curses. Fast forward today, look what's going on. We all see what's going on, y'all. We see black people being shot down in the streets. We're seeing discrimination on the highest level. No matter where you go, you try to get ahead. You know, we can have 4 degrees, 4 master's degrees, and it don't even matter. We'll see the whites get more privilege than we do. I mean, this whole country is set up, and white supremacy is so embedded in this whole world that a lot of people can't even see it. And it's set up for them, it's set up for their privileges, and it's set up for our destruction. Remember, I've read, well, I don't know if I read it in this one, but Job 9:24, it says that the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. So we know that we're constantly living in the land of our enemies. So we're constantly being smitten before our enemies. And my goodness, and they're doing it, laughing about it, and glorying about it, and it's crazy. But they're going to get their reward. Their time is coming. Now, you tell me if these heathens, if their children are getting shot down in the streets. I don't think so. You don't see Mexican people getting shot down in the streets. You don't see Puerto Ricans. You don't see Cuban folks. You don't see these white, pale-skinned people getting shot down in the streets like our so-called black folks are. Why? Because they do not fit the curses. We fit the curses. Now, I know I've been going over all these curses, and it sounds pretty bad. And yes, it is bad because of the sins of our forefathers. We have to go through these, and we are seeing the effects of these curses. But that was only to bring us to repentance. That was the whole purpose, brothers and sisters, of these curses, was to bring the future generation to repentance. And that's what's happening. As we're waking up, getting back to the Torah, these curses are starting to come off of us. But guess what? The time of the heathen is now here, because now we're seeing all this heat, all this destruction coming upon the heathen. And this is just the beginning. We ain't seen nothing yet. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, our deliverance is almost here. we're pretty much out of our captivity. We're probably already out of our captivity and just don't know it yet. But, we're very either out of it or very close to it, becoming out of it. So these are some great times to be living in. This is the time to rejoice. And it's an honor to be able to be a part of Yah's chosen people. So don't take these curses, take them as a learning experience. This is what our forefathers did. This is us suffering from the sins of our forefathers. And these are why these curses are upon us. And it's not to make us angry and to a fact that we leave the Most High, but it's to bring us to repentance. That's the whole purpose of these curses. So I want y'all to keep that in mind.
The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
Here's another big one that is so prevalent today. So let's talk about this madness, blindness, and astonishment of heart. What does it mean when it says the Lord will smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart? Well, you look at our people today. You look at how our people are suffering on these streets. We got some of the greatest mental illness in our people, and it's like our people are the only race of people that suffer greatly from this. And there's a reason for that. Again, it's the curses. And blindness. How are they blind? The Bible says that there will be a famine of Yah's word. And you look at Christianity today, these people do not bring their Bibles to church. These dumb pastors that won't bark, these so-called sleeping Israelite pastors, will not warn their people, will not tell them the truth and who they are. So they're like dumb dogs who won't bark. So our people are constantly blind and constantly trying to search, but are blind. And it says, and astonishment of heart. We see all the killings that are happening to our people because a lot of our people are still ignorant, and we're still looking to our slave masters for deliverance. We think that it's going to come a time where we're going to get the other nations to love us. That's not going to happen. The Most High said that wouldn't happen. In Matthew, it says that we would be hated among all nations. And that's a fact, because no matter where we are in this world, we're constantly hated among the nations. So you have a lot of our black brothers and sisters who are constantly thinking that some kind of miracle is going to take place where all the nations are going to come together and everybody's going to come together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But that's not going to happen. The Bible says it's going to get worse and worse. And I truly believe that the Most High is separating us, is trying to separate us from these other nations. For some reason, a lot of our people just don't get it. They do not get it. And we have some of the most stiff-necked, dumbfounded people amongst us, And thou shalt grope at noonday. Well, what does that mean? Grope at noonday as the blind grope in darkness. We got so many of our consular brothers and sisters. Not only are Yah's people waking up, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are waking up to other demonic stuff. Take Egyptology, for example. You have a lot of our people who are getting into that. They're getting into all this New Age stuff. It's crazy because our people are constantly trying to find some kind of identity, but rather than allowing the Holy Spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, to dwell in their hearts and to allow them to search the truth and who they are, they're getting into all this other stuff that's leading them down the road of damnation, to the destruction of their souls. And when we look at where it says, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, so no matter how we try to get ahead, no matter how we try to come together, it's always spoiled. There's a reason for that, brothers and sisters, because we are the only race of people on the face of the earth that fit these prophecies. And I hope this is becoming very clear, because we're on number 7, and we've covered some curses already. So, and I pray that this is very clear to you all, super clear, that our people are the only race of people on the face of the earth that fits these curses. And it says, and no man shall save thee. Now, that's a big one too, because we know about the civil rights leaders. We know that Malcolm X and all his endeavors, he tried. Martin Luther King, he couldn't deliver us. We had Marcus Garvey, who was actually an Israelite, by the way, and he was telling people who we were, but it wasn't the time yet. The Most High had not appointed that time for us to know, but a few people did know back then. You had Michael Stokely Carmichael, who tried, but he couldn't deliver us either. So all these people who tried to deliver us, or who tried to make a difference for the black race, or the so-called African American race, it all failed because it wasn't the Most High's appointed time yet. So that goes to show you right there that Bible prophecy was fulfilled, that no man shall save you, meaning deliver you, or be able to bring us to a point. See, only the Most High is going to bring us back. It is His Spirit that is waking up His people all over the world, and that's why we see a great awakening. So these camps are pushing that these white, pale-skinned Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and Native Americans are Israelites. Then if that's the case, then how come they are not waking up? How come Mexico is not waking up? How come these Puerto Ricans are not waking up? Why is that? Because they are not the chosen people of Yah. And they do not thenceforth fit the curses of Yah's chosen people. They do not. And we're gonna keep on continue to cover this. And you're gonna see even more how they don't fit the prophecies of Yah's chosen people.
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
We see this one a lot, don't we? In all the slave movies that Hollywood loves to put out. Now, we'll have to give Hollywood credit on this one. Now, this something that they do get right most of the times when it comes to our slavery, even though they don't put all the details in the movies, but they're pretty much on point. But this verse right here says a mouthful. And again, our people during slavery went through all kind of atrocities. It says, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. This is so prevalent. This was so prevalent during slavery. Because our women were very beautiful back then. You know they were. And these old horny heathen devils would take our forefathers, our mothers, the daughters of Zion, and they would literally rape them, have children by them. It was crazy. And this was constantly going on. Not only did they rape the women, but they raped the children too. And sometimes some of the men. It was ridiculous. It was just all kind of stuff. And, we see this all the time in movies, and we read about it in history. How the slave constantly built houses for them, but they couldn't live in them. And you look what the slaves lived in. They lived in little worse than shacks. Some of them even slept with the pigs. Because remember I said earlier that the Israelites during slavery were considered a fifth of a person. So that means they were like property. They were the value of property, and they were treated like property. See, this is why these heathens are going to suffer greatly for the sins of their forefathers. There's going to come a time where they're going to be our servants, as it says in Isaiah 14. They're going to be planting our vineyards. They're going to be building our homes. They're going to be changing our baby diapers. So, and look at the bottom portion, where it says that we will plant a vineyard, and they shall not gather the grapes thereof. Our forefathers were constantly working in the fields. They saw all this stuff, and I can just imagine the envy of our forefathers working in these fields, knowing that they're working for free slave labor. They're planting all this stuff. They're seeing all these good vegetables grow, but they can't touch none of it. It's not even theirs. It's not even their land, their houses, but they built it. And this is why people don't understand, because it was our forefathers who built this country. But yet, the heathens want us to forget about slavery. The heathens want us to forget about how we were treated, how our forefathers were treated. But yet, when it comes to 9/11 and the Holocaust, oh yeah, we're going to have this. We're going to have a celebration every year. We're going to remember this one. But no, when it comes to slavery and how our people were treated, oh, you're an enemy. They want you to forget about it. They don't even want you to bring it up. And it's even bad amongst our own people because they don't even want to bring it up. They don't want to forget about it. But I got news for y'all. The Most High don't forget. And guess what? The dues of these heathens have not been recompensed. And recompense time is going to come. When we leave this place, we're going to be spoiled beyond belief. We're getting out of here billionaires. We're going to be rich. We're going to be the richest people on the face of the earth after the Most High gets done with them. And so this is what was going on. So you had a lot of atrocities with our people that were going on during those slavery days. And technically, we're still in captivity today. It's because we don't have chains on us, on our feet and hands. We're slavery mentally and somewhat physically. Because guess what? Our people, it's not like our people are out making $100 million a year. We can barely get the good jobs that we really want. And it doesn't matter if we have a degree, master's, doctor's degree. You get these heathens that come in here with less than a high school diploma, and they're getting better jobs than us. So white privilege is still there. Yet they don't want to admit it. They act like it don't exist, but these heathens know it exists. They know it exists. So you mean to tell me that these heathens are Israelites? What vineyards have they planted and not eaten the grapes thereof or the vegetables thereof? None, because they got their own country. These people have had their own country ever since they got there. They got their own government, their own officials. They got a place to lay their head. They got a place to call their own. So it is very clear that these heathens do not fit the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Yeah, some may say that they went through some stuff, but so has other races. Chinese people were oppressed at one time. The Japanese were oppressed at one time. So there were other nations who were oppressed, but nothing like what our forefathers been through. I don't care what anybody say. You're not going to find it. You can pull up all the research you want to. You'll never find anywhere in any research that other nations went through the same treatment as our forefathers went through. Because these other nations, they didn't have to worry about being treated as a fifth of a person. It was our people. Our nation of people, the Hebrew Israelites, the only race on the face of the earth, were treated as the fifth of a person. That right there ought to tell you something. No other people have gone through that.
Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand.
Y'all remember the old TV series called Roots when Kunta Kinte and his wife had to watch their daughter Chizzy getting taken away? In that scene where she was on the little buggy, and they were crying and wailing and everything, and little Chizzy was just going to be sold off to another people. That's exactly what this verse is talking about. During slavery, a lot of our forefathers' daughters and sons were sold into slavery. They had children, and it was like they knew when they had their children that they were going to end up losing them. But with hopes of some kind of glory, they were hoping to hang on to them, but it was always met with disappointment. Their children being constantly taken away. It says right here, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. And this was a constant thing with our people. And again, it was only our people, the Negroes, who fit this curse, because we're the only race of people who've gone through this. Now, let's take the native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, Native Americans, and Cubans. Now, you have some people out there that are trying to teach falsely that these people went through slavery. Well, there's nowhere in history that these people went into slavery. Let me tell you why. They didn't go into slavery for the same reasons that the whites could not enslave the Native Americans. They knew the land too well. And these white people, they knew that these folks knew the land so well, so they could not enslave them because they knew where to go, they knew where to hide, they knew how to maneuver throughout the land. So these people never, ever went through slavery like our forefathers. Now, however, yeah, you had the Spaniards that came over and they raped some of the women and things like that, but it wasn't nothing like what our forefathers went through. And so these people tried to make an excuse to say that because these folks went into slavery, that they're Israelites. But they didn't go into slavery. You can look throughout history. These people did not go into slavery. The only thing that happened to them is Christopher Columbus came over and raped their women. But they did the same thing to the Native Americans. But they could not enslave them because they knew the land too well. So this is another proof right here that only our people, the Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth, fit this prophecy. And these native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, Cubans, they don't. They just don't.
The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed away, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see.
Slave movie after slave movie. It was the same old thing. We know the history. We know the history of our forefathers, how they constantly planted for these slave masters, labored for these slave masters, and did not enjoy one iota of their labors. This was foretold. This was another curse and a prophecy that would fulfill itself during slavery. And we've seen it time after time, and we've seen it. And when we look at this and see how our people were treated, I mean, I can go into great detail. I'll be here all day just describing the in-depth details of what our people had to go through in this sense. Could you imagine just working in somebody's vineyard and you could never eat, not even hardly touch, just to do labors, but you could not eat of the things that you planted? It was a constant. And could you imagine the envy and the jealousy that our people had to go through? And this is why the Most High had to bring us through this. He had to bring us through jealousy so we would see that we would be living among our enemies, but yet our enemies would be ruling over us. Not only ruling over us, but they will oppress us. And this is something, this is huge. Because a lot of people don't realize every time you want to mention slavery to the heathens, they want you to forget. They don't want you to remember anything like that. But yet, anything else like the Holocaust, 9/11, oh yeah, let's celebrate that. But when it comes to slavery, oh no, they don't want you touching that. And as far as these heathens, these native Mexicans and Cubans, Hispanics, these folks, Native Americans, they do not fit this curse at all. And none of the other curses that I've talked about, they don't fit. As a matter of fact, did y'all know that Native Americans own slaves? When Abraham Lincoln put a ban on to, well, not necessarily abolish slavery, but to put an end to it, as far as them having chains on them, the Native Americans rebelled the worst. The Native Americans were like the biggest revolters because they owned slaves. Now, you tell me if those people are really Israelites, they were not supposed to own slaves. I'm also going to leave a link for you all to show you that these Native Americans own slaves so that you can see it with your own eyes. So just make sure you check all the links. I'm going to have quite a few links on there that goes with this lesson. So that way you guys can research this and you can see it for yourself. Just don't take my word for it. Research it. It's out there.
The Lord shall bring thee and thy king which thou shalt set over thee unto a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, and there shalt thou serve other gods, wood and stone.
Don't let these historians trick you, because when our forefathers came over here on slavery, on slave ships, they spoke Hebrew. They were practicing Israelites. That's right. They were practicing Israelites. But history would try to tell you that they were Africans that came over here. They had no language. They had no history. They were just savages. But that's what they tell you in the history books. We go back to 70 AD when our forefathers were ran out of Jerusalem. They were spread out throughout Africa. They were still practicing their heritage. They had accepted the Holy HaMashiach as a living Son of God. And therefore, they were still practicing what they believed. But historians won't tell you that. They don't want you to know that. So when a lot of our people were gathered up, just like it said in the Word of God, they were practicing Israelites. They brought them over here on slave ships to America. They spoke Hebrew. They couldn't speak the English language. But what happened over the years? Over the years, you had generation after generation who forgot their heritage. Remember, the Most High said that I will put yokes of iron upon your neck until you are destroyed. So by the time the yokes of iron came off our forefathers' neck, they didn't know who they were. But they knew who they were when they came over here because they were practicing Israelites. But the slaves, the wicked slave masters, they shut all that down. They didn't allow them to practice their heritage. They had to obey everything that the white slave masters said. Now, we're talking about this coming into a country serving other gods in wood and stone. Well, what is this other god that our forefathers had to serve wood and stone? It was Christianity, which began with Constantine. So what is this wood and stone? What was this image that was pushed, that was constantly pushed before our forefathers? Here it is right here. This is the image that was constantly pushed before our forefathers. This is what our forefathers had to bow down to. 400 years of this stuff pushed before our forefathers. Now, a lot of y'all know about the history of Caesar Borgia, so I don't have to get in depth with them. But you know who Caesar Borgia is, and we all know that this is not our Messiah, our black Messiah. This was conjured up during the Renaissance when the heathen popes took charge on themselves to take our writings, to take our images and paint our images like unto themselves. So that's what they did. And they came up with this Christianity, and this Christianity has been going on since the Renaissance days, way before America came on the scene. But this was pushed before our forefathers. The whole idea of white supremacy was to take an image like this, put it before our people, and ingrain it in them for 400 years so that their children's children and their children's children will grow up thinking that this is Christ. And not only that, but thinking that white people are more superior. And this is how white supremacy works, and it still exists today. You look at all the Hollywood movies that they make. Every time you see an action movie, it's always a white person that's leading out, or somebody white that is a hero or in charge, or more superior, or more smarter. So the whole idea of white supremacy is to make it seem like that these race of people are smarter than black people, are greater than black people, are stronger than black people, are more powerful than black people, when in reality it's the opposite. And this is what they've been doing. They've been doing it for many years. And you're going to still see, if you go to a lot of your black churches, you're going to still see these white images in their churches. You're going to still see a lot of these white images in people's home. Why? Because it's a generational curse. It's something that's been instilled in them. You have to break yourself from that. That's why the Holy Spirit is waking his people up, and people are coming to the truth, and they're putting away these idols. They're burning these idols and coming to the realization, hey, we are a chosen people of the Most High. We have to get back to these laws, commandments, and statutes. We got to break this chain so that our children don't make the same mistake. And that's what we're seeing with the awakened people of Yah. We're seeing a revolution that is so profound that no one can stop. Not even white supremacy can stop it. This is why you're seeing all this destruction coming upon this earth, because we're waking up, coming out of our captivity, and the time of the heathen is here. And this is what we see going on as we speak right now. As far as the Christianity heathen folks, they were already here in this land. So they were already worshiping other idols and gods. So it was easy for them to adapt to this image, to the image of this Caesar Borgia. It wasn't no problem at all for them because they were already serving other gods. But it was our people who at one time worshiped the Most High. And when our people came over here to America as slaves, we were practicing, or our forefathers were practicing Israelites. They knew who they were. It was just they were destroyed through the generations until the yokes of iron came off their necks.
And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee.
Well, let's discuss this astonishment. So when it says we shall become like an astonishment, what does that mean? Well, you look at our so-called black folks today, and you look how they behave themselves. No matter where we are in this world, it seems like we're doing the same thing, our ignorant people who are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Especially here in America, you look how our people are just walking around with their pants sagging, very disrespectful to parents, no regard for their elders whatsoever. And they're walking around here with their pants sagging and all kind of stuff. Disrespectful. You look at the cars that a lot of our people are driving, they try to mac out their rims, pimp out their rides, all kind of things. You know, it's just those worldly things that they love. And then you look at the prison systems. A lot of our people are just in prisons. But we know that was set up by the Europeans anyway to bring back slavery. But it tells you how we're such an astonishment because the whole world looks at us and we're judged based upon what media puts out. So we are an astonishment to all the other nations. They look at us like, man, what is wrong with those people? They can't understand. But they don't really understand that this is a curse. This is a generational curse that will be foretold and be fulfilled. And it's fulfilling out in our generation. And that's how we're becoming an astonishment. But there's a flip side to that astonishment as well, too. Another part of this astonishment is that we are the best in sports. We are the only race of people that are so good at sports. We're better than any other race of people on the face of the earth in sports. And that's a proven fact. That's hands down right there. You don't even have to do research to know that. You can just plainly see it, how we excel in sports. And not only in sports, but we excel in academics as well. Did y'all know that we've had 12 black astronauts? That's right, 12 black astronauts. We had a lot more than that, but the media is not going to put that out. Now these astronauts, some of these astronauts are still current today, and some of the brightest and smartest astronauts above their white peers. But you won't hear media put that out. Let me tell you why. Because it's this whole ideology called white supremacy. Now, in order to secure white supremacy, you have to make the public believe that white people are still superior. You have to make them believe through media, through politics, through news agencies, that white people are still superior. And this is why they won't show you all these plagues that are falling upon these heathens, like you see here. They're not going to show you that because if white America figures out what's going on, once they figure out that we are the chosen people of the Most High, hell's going to break loose because they're going to realize that their white supremacy exists no more. And that's a problem for America. So they have to keep these kind of things hidden from us in order to instill in the minds of their people white supremacy. Let's talk about this proverb and byword. Y'all want to know something, y'all? Did y'all know that the so-called African American are named after two European men? Y'all want to know who those men are? Well, I'm going to show you who they are. One name is Scipio Africanus, and the other person is Americo Vespucci. That's right. Scipio Africanus was a Roman general. As a matter of fact, Africa was named after this man. See, a lot of people don't read their history. Did y'all know that Africa wasn't even named Africa when our Holy Hamashiach was on the scene? Africa was part of the Middle East. That's why when Paul traveled to those places in Africa, he didn't mention Africa. He just mentioned some of the countries in Africa and throughout Asia Minor, which were part of Africa and the Middle East. Very interesting. And the other person name is Americo Vespucci. So why is it that blacks, so-called blacks, are the only race of people that constantly get name changes? During slavery, we were called nigger all the time. We were considered as a fifth of a person. We were called niggas. We were called coons, colored, African American. Why all the name changes? There's a reason behind that. Because the powers that be, the ruling nations of this world, know who we are. Why do you think they could keep putting titles on us? Why do you think that they only tell us that our history only goes back prior to prior to 1600? Why is that? There's a reason for this. Because these folks know who we are as a people. How come when other people come over here to the United States, like Asians, how come they don't call them Asian Americans? How come you don't call Mexicans Mexican Americans? How come you don't call European Americans? because they came from Europe too. They came from other places. So did the other races. So that goes to show you right there that blacks, so-called blacks scattered to the four corners of the earth, we're the only people who fit this prophecy. And no matter where we are in the world, we are called so-called bywords and proverbs. Let's take these white, pale-skinned Native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Native Americans, and Cubans that these camps are saying who are Israelites. Let's just see if they fit this description. So, are Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, are they called bywords? Yes, they are. Absolutely. But here's my point. Does that make them an Israelite? Just because they're called wetbacks, spicks, does that make them part of Israel? Does that make them part of Yah's chosen people? Absolutely not. See, this is a ridiculous thing that they come up with, because if that was the case, then every race of nation, every race of people would be Israelites. That means that your so-called whites would be Israelites, your so-called Asians will be Israelites, your so-called Arabs will be Israelites. Everybody on the face of the earth would be Israelites. So you see how stupid this thing is for them to say just because these white, pale-skinned Mexicans, Native Americans, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, just because they're called bywords that all of a sudden qualifies them for being an Israelite? That's ridiculous. For them to come up with something like this. So that goes to show you the ignorance and the lack of scripture knowledge that a lot of these camps leaders have. But yet, it's because they want to bring in foreign women and they want to marry into these women and have children by them. But guess what? The Most High forbade that. Now you read the last two books of Ezra. They had to put away their wives. Not only did they have to put away their foreign wives, but they had to put away their children that were born unto them. Could you imagine the embarrassment that our forefathers had to go through, had to witness, because they were stupid? And any time that our people took on foreign wives, you can read throughout the scriptures, they were destroyed. The Most High did not play that. That's why a lot of people like to say, well, the Israelites, they always mix with the women. Yeah, they did on occasions, but guess what? God, the Most High, jacked them up. Either made them get rid of their foreign wives and their children, or either he destroyed them. So we cannot get around that, Israel, and it's the facts. So if you want to justify bywords to bring in heathens, then you might as well just go to your so-called whites, your Asians, your Arabs, and tell them that they're Israelites too, because they're called bywords. They're called honkies, crackers, rednecks. They're called tight-eyed, yellow belly. They're called all kind of stuff. So are they Israel too? Just because they're called bywords, because they got different names that people call them, does that make them an Israelite? Does that make them fit the prophecies of the Most High? That would be a hell no in all caps to the highest dimension. Only the Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth fit this prophecy. Once again, as stated with all the curses throughout the scriptures, only the Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth fit these prophecies.
Thou shalt plant vineyards and dress them, but shalt neither drink of the wine nor gather the grapes, for the worms shall eat them.
Time after time, no matter how much our forefathers labored for their enemies in their slave plantations, it seems like everything that they planted, all the vineyards that they planted, they dressed them, brought forth all kind of stuff, but they could not enjoy them because it all went to their slave masters. It went to the other nations. And even after the chains came off, they were still cursed because they still couldn't plant anything. They could plant something, but it was demolished, it was destroyed, it was never successful. The other nations would take their lands. Fast forward today, how many black farmers do you know? How many black farmers do you hear about today that own their own farms that are producing food for the other nations? None. So we don't own all that stuff. So here's another prophecy that only the Negroes spread to the four corners of the earth fit. And these were the curses of our forefathers. As far as these native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, Native Americans, Cubans, They have their own land. Did y'all know a lot of our food from the U.S. comes from Mexico and these other countries? That's right, because they have their stuff. They don't have to worry about not being cursed, planting their vineyards. They grow stuff all the time in their countries. So don't let people fool you into thinking that these people are Israelites just because they've gone through some things or called some bywords. These people got their own land, their government official, their city councils, their own schools, private schools, their own bus systems, their own businesses. You do your research, you'll see it.
Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck, until he have destroyed thee.
So the word of the Lord is directly telling us who our enemies are. He's saying that we would have to go to our enemies in everything. Whenever we want water, food, clothing, and all the necessities that we need on this earth. So who owns all these things? It's not the so-called black people. It's not the so-called black people scattered to the four corners of the earth. We don't own the water reservoirs. We don't own the banks. We don't own the companies, the restaurants, fire stations, the clubhouses. We don't own none of that stuff. But yet the Most High is telling us that we're going to have to go to our enemies in the want of these things. And now when I say enemies, it's literally talking about our enemies. It's talking about the other nations outside of Israel. But you got these people caught up in this Christian insanity, and I call it Christian insanity because it's a drug religion. And they got our people thinking that we have to love our enemies, thinking it's talking about the other nations outside of Israel, but it's not. When Christ said love your enemy, he was talking about our own people. And that's written through the scriptures, because even in Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 13, it says that Judah shall not envy Ephraim, and Ephraim shall not vex Judah. So because there was a split between the two tribes when the tribes broke up. And remember, Judah caused Ephraim to worship idols, and you can read about that in Hosea. And when the Most High gave Ephraim a bill of divorcement, it's like the Most High put them away because of their idol worship. But then they were grafted in back during the days of the apostle and back during the days of Christ. So that was the enemy that Christ was talking about. So when Christ said love your enemies, he was talking about our own people. But a lot of our so-called people got it mixed up because they're thinking that they're supposed to love everybody. They think they're supposed to love the Asians, the whites, the Hispanics, all the other nations outside of Israel. But the Most High was referring only to our own people. Why do you think there's so much crime against our own people? Why do you think in these major cities you have black on black crime? This is an example of hating our brothers and sisters, because we have been taught from birth to self-hatred. There was a dog test that was conducted by the infamous Dr. Amos Wilson, and you all can look it up on YouTube. This is called the dog test. And what Dr. Wilson did is he took a black dog and a white dog, and he wanted to see how the children would react when asked certain questions. And he took kids from the age of 5 to 12. And he would ask questions like, okay, which one is the good doll? All the kids would point to the white doll, of course. And he would say, which one is the smart doll? They would point to the white doll. Then he would say, which one is the ugly doll? They would point to the black doll. He would say, which one is the bad doll? And they would point to the black doll. And he would switch the questions up each time. And each time something negative that was asked, they would all point to the black doll. Now, why is that? See, that goes to show you how these children are taught from birth to hate the black race. So this is like a double curse, because not only are the other nations are taught at birth to hate the black race, but the black race is taught at birth to hate their own race. And then you wonder why everybody keeps saying, well, we got to love our enemies outside of Israel. And you wonder why it hadn't worked in 2,000 years. Go figure. Another yet prophecy that only the Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth, or you so-called blacks, fit. Because it was prophesied that we would have to go to our enemies for everything. And you look at so-called blacks as a whole, We don't have anything. We've been demolished to pretty much at the lowest level. We're totally at the bottom. We are the permanent underclass below all the other races, and it was meant to be that way. And it was meant to be that way for a certain purpose, because it was to fulfill prophecy. But yet, you have people that are teaching that these pale, white-skinned Mexicans, Latinos, Hispanics, are all Israelites. Do they fit this prophecy as well? Nope, I don't think so. They got their own countries. They got their own restaurants. I said earlier, you can't even go 5 blocks within the U.S. without hitting the Mexican restaurants. The Puerto Ricans got their own stuff. They might not own all the banks. They might not own all the water reservoirs, what have you. But they definitely are not the tail. I can guarantee you that. They're not below the so-called black people. I can tell you that. So there we have it again. Only the Negroes scattered to the four corners of the earth fit this prophecy.
The Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor shew favor to the young.
When the Africans, the so-called Hamites, sold our forefathers, the Israelites, into slavery, it happened so fast and so abruptly, and it was so violent, because they knew who the children of the Most High were. They knew what their custom was. Our forefathers carried a custom like no other. They were the best builders. Their dress, their obedience to the Most High. Those Africans didn't like that. So when the European settlers came over, it was an opportunity for these Hamites to sell, but it was also prophecy. There's a book. It's called From Babylon to Timbuktu. I would encourage you all to read that. It's by Rudolph Winsler. Very good book. I read it like twice. And he describes in this book where the northern tribes are scattered, and he talked about the slave trade and all that. So it's a really good book to get into. And then getting back to this verse, it says, a nation of fierce consonants, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And we see it so much in movies, especially slave movies. No matter how much the black man succeeded, he was still considered a boy. No matter how much success he had, he was still considered a boy. And it's that way to this present day. You know, we're not respected. We're not respected. Our young is not respected. The nation still look down on us. This is a twofold curse. It happened to our forefathers during the Atlantic slave trade, as well in this present day. You know, and no matter what a black man has, they can have a master's degree, they can have 2 doctorate degrees. They are still looked upon as other nations as a nigger. I'm just going to be honest with you. And that's what a lot of these heathens be thinking in their mind when they see black people. You know, they're not going to come out and say it to your face, but that's what's going on in your mind, because this is yet another prophecy that only the so-called blacks fit, the Negroes that are scattered to the four corners of the earth. These heathens you see before you, they don't fit this curse. They've never been through that before. So don't let anyone fool you.
And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
After 70 AD, after our forefathers fled into Africa, that was it. That would be the last time we would see Jerusalem until Christ's return. And it goes to show you right here, this is the biggest prophecy of all. This is the most famous one that a lot of people are familiar with. And when it's talking about Egypt, it's not talking about the land in Egypt and Africa. It's talking about symbolically America, because we know that the Atlantic slave trade, they were sent to America, to South America, and the parts of the Caribbean. No other race of people fit this prophecy. This only happened to the so-called Negroes, so-called black folks. Nobody can refute this. Even scholars will tell you what happened. You can find books on it. You can see it. You can go on YouTube. You can research it. This is something that cannot be refuted at all. And when it says no man shall buy you, it was meaning that no one will be able to get us out of slavery, because it was the Most High who put us into slavery. And it was because of our forefathers' rebellion that we went into slavery. And this wasn't the first time we went into slavery, of course. It's throughout the scriptures. But this was probably the most violent one, because by the time the yokes of iron came off, we didn't know who we were. And to this very day, that's why the Holy Spirit, the Ruach Kodesh, is constantly waking his people up, because now the time is right, and we're seeing these dry bones starting to rise, and they're coming up. You won't find nowhere in the scriptures where these old pale-skinned heathens that these camps are pushing are Israelites, saying that they're Israelites. You will not find one verse in the scriptures stating that they came over here on ships. That's a total disgrace to the Most High and an abomination. Once again, only the Negroes, so-called blacks, Negroes, are the only ones who fit this prophecy. Point blank.
And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a stomacher, a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty.
This is another prophecy that only fits the Negroes, the so-called blacks scattered to the four corners of the earth. And I just want to say a little on this, because you look at the daughters of Zion, and it seems like that the daughters of Zion are looked down upon more than the black Israelite men. And there's a reason for that. And again, it's part of the curse and the generational curses that Most High has put upon us. But getting back to the daughters of Zion, we have some very beautiful women, and our women have always been very beautiful, even back in the days of old. And so, we have a lot of times people are looking down on our black women, especially our own people. We have a bad habit of looking down on our women, and it's because when they look at the women, they always claim that, okay, well, they don't have enough hair, or they don't have no hair. They're always wearing weaves, but they don't realize that was part of the curse. And I'm not saying all black women are having issues with their hair or scalps, but I only bring this out for edification, so that you all will specifically know that it is very specific that we, especially daughters of Zion, fit the prophecies of this book. And it's prevalent. Now, no other race of people have this issue, especially with their hair. But yet you got these camps who want to teach and mislead people by telling that these heathens are Israelites. They don't have a problem with baldness in their hair. They don't have issues in their bodies like the children of Israel. This curse was only for us. And that's why you see the things you do. And it's the reason why the things are the way they are, especially with our people. And it's because of the curse, because of disobedience to the Most High.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
I really hope you see it clearly now, Israel. I hope you get the picture. The whole purpose of this lesson was to show you distinctly how only the Negroes fit the curses of Yah's word. This is why this is so important to understand, that we fit the curses of Yah's word, because if we don't understand this, then it's going to be hard for us to understand the whole purpose of the Most High and what he has in store for us. I said it earlier that the purpose of these curses was not to make us hate the Most High and leave his word, but it was to bring us to jealousy and to bring us to repentance. Because this was foretold that this would come upon our forefathers, and not only our forefathers, but we're still living out the curses up to this very day. But here's the good news. Our captivity is almost over. We're coming out of our captivity. And as we're coming out of our captivity, a lot of our people are waking up all over, and we're waking up by the thousands all over the world, not just here in the United States. And as our people are waking up, we're starting to see the judgment of the heathens come upon this earth. And we're seeing it more and more day by day, and it's going to continue to increase. So we are living in the very minutes probably the seconds of this earth's history. We're getting ready to see things come to a close. Now, I also wanted to show you how that these heathens, that these camps are telling their followers that these Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Native Americans, and Cubans are Israelites. And see, a lot of people are starting to wake up from that too, because a lot of people in these camps are starting to realize the lies that are being spread by their leaders. Let me ask y'all something. If these people were so-called Israelites, how come you don't see them waking up all over the world? How come when you see all these camps, they only have a small smidget of these pale-faced heathens in their camps? There's a reason for that. I'm going to tell you what that reason is. Turn with me to Romans chapter 8, and we're going to read verse 16. Let's see what the Apostle Paul has to say about this. And it says, again, Romans 8:16 says, the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of Yah. That's powerful, y'all. That is the reason why these so-called white, pale-skinned, native Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Hispanics, and Native Americans and Cubans are not waking up, because they don't bear the spirit of our forefathers. It's clear, and that ought to be evident to every awakening Israelite. How come you don't see videos of these pale-skinned heathens doing videos trying to wake their people up? I haven't seen not one. The only ones I see are the ones in these false camps, these camps that are spreading all this lies. But they're not the ones. They're not even the ones teaching this stuff. So-called black Israelites.
Is Christ divided? The church on every corner, but we don't see no change. Your Holy Spirit ain't inside. Men don't pray no more. Their lust is bringing them the signs. They move with Satan moving. He got them excited. How you call yourself a man with no self-control? How you moving like a boy when you super old? How you let a bottle with liquor take your soul? How you let some nasty broad bring you low? It's a war and a fight for your soul. Proverbs 25:28, gotta be the goal, be the goal. It's a war for your soul. Proverbs 25:28, gotta be the goal. You can go and run the streets, but not me. I'ma serve the only one who made me. You can go and love the world, but not me. I'ma make sure my garments stay clean. You can move how you want, but not me. That Bible real, and one day you'll see. You don't believe in the Father, but not me. When He made everything I see. For your soul.